So what I did is I hit this with the rattle can, just did green. But before I did that, I hit everything with a gray primer. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it with a lid belcher. This is a spice brown. I'm just covering the wood. And when you cover the wood, just make sure you go in between the creases like this so you don't see the balsa wood and it's lighter. I mean, your wash should take care of it, but you just want to make sure that you get it all. I have a lot of wood tutorials on the row house and things like that, so if you want to go check those out, you can. This is just a bulk black paint that I'm going to make a wash out of. I don't want to use my known oil on this because it costs me a lot of money. Notice on the metal that it's not smoothly covered because I really don't care. Now the wash is a little bit too thick, so I can dip my brush in water and fix that problem. I'm putting a little bit more water in it. And I want to start at the top on this and let it bleed down, just kind of work the paint down. I do plan on covering the wood and the green and everything with this black wash. Sometimes I normally wouldn't do that, but on terrain, it's, this post-apocalyptic stuff, I don't really mind. And I also want to try and keep it as level as possible when I'm doing this, just let gravity do its magic for me. And when I'm doing this up here, I want to make sure I don't let this seam dry so there's not like a bathtub ring on it. And just kind of get this whole dome shape done first. This is Drakenhof Nightshade. Just going to selectively put it on the metal part. When I do this nightshade, I'm just doing it just to tint some areas. I'm not going to do it everywhere. And just kind of give it a different hue. I think it's cool looking. Kind of give it that cold metal feel. Now when I do it here, I'm just using my finger to go over it and just to kind of streak it. Just to give it more of a weathered look, more of a grimy look. I guess you could use a sponge too, but I think my sponges are downstairs. And then I really like to do it along the bottom just to darken the bottom up too, and then especially in the seams. This is a lead belcher, and I'm just going to do some dry brushing and make sure I have a really wide brush on this one, just so it's easy to hide brush strokes if you have a wide brush. And I want to mostly get the edges. I'm not really concerned about the other stuff, just because there's going to be so much weathering on this that I'm not really concerned about that. I just want to get the edges mostly, and maybe on the crown too, up here, get a little bit more. But I don't want to go heavy on this because I still want it to be dungy, dirty, grimy, oily. And I'll go over all the metal with this or a smaller brush, but I just want to make sure I dry brush everywhere. This is a green seed, just kind of a lighter color green, and I'm going to dry brush this, and I'm not going to go really heavy at first, just because I don't want to overwhelm it, and I want to have it in layers. I want to kind of really control where it's going. And so it's going to be a little bit tricky. Just going to hit the edges first, and then when I start to go down, when the paint starts to leave my brush and I don't have as much on it, I'm going to start streaking down to kind of help exaggerate or show that there is weathering and it's streaking. But I definitely want to get the edges. I kind of tested over here a little bit just to make sure this is the color I want to go with. And if I do get too much paint on there, I'm just going to take it off with my finger. It'll still leave some paint behind, but it just won't be as dramatic. This is raw sienna. I'm just going to go over the first layer of the wood because I'm going to do at least 2 layers, maybe 3 layers on the wood, just to give it a really aged look. But raw sienna is the first layer, kind of give it like the idea that it's just brand new wood put up, but obviously it's not because it's been here for a little while. Now that the raw sienna is all done, we'll do Hippo Gray, and I don't want to be heavy-handed on this. Just going to give it a weathered look, and I want to have it lighter down the center where it looks like it's a pathway. This won't be the final one. I'm going to have one more gray after this one, but this is just kind of give it that aged look. And I believe in working in layers because it just gives a more authentic look to the wood. And I'm just going to kind of start graying this out a little bit. And this is once again dry brushing. Just put some paint on my brush and remove most of it. And I want to try to use the side of the brush too initially, just so it doesn't go down in the creases. You see how it's kind of it's starting to gray it out, but it still gives that richness of the raw sienna and the other colors underneath. This is Cabinet Gray, and I'm just using this as a highlight primarily, so I don't want a whole lot of paint on my brush. I want to remove as much as possible because I don't want to overwhelm the piece with the lighter highlight. And just want to hit the edges a little bit more intently on the sides, and then just go down. Primarily, well, on this one I do want to have the path lighter to where it shows a little bit more wear and tear, and then I'll kind of bleed out on the edges a little bit more. Now I'm using Agrax Earthshade to go around and darken some things up, like right here next to this. I darkened it up right here and over here in some seams. And now I'm just going to start hitting some of the metal. And I only want to really hit the seams or where I think things may deposit over time. Just using this to darken the border of the metal where it touches. I might do some streaks underneath as far as weathering is concerned, or where those little spots are that I made. I'm going to start doing that. Darken them up, start getting that going. Just use it around the seams. Even though this tarp's not painted yet, I do want to darken up the border or the transition of where the tarp does meet another surface, like I did on the wood. I do want to do that just to make it so it stands out when I do paint it. When I did the row house, I did a lot of tarps there too, so you can go back and see other tarps that I've done if you want to check out the row house. As it starts to dry, I do try to blend it a little bit so it's not such a crisp line. I've done some weathering with Seraphim Sepia and some Nuln oil. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use iron oxide, and I'm going to just kind of dabble into the areas where there's going to be rust, just to start adding color to it. I'm not going to, some of it I might go and completely cover it, but I'm just going to dabble for the most part right now, and just to see how it looks, and start going through and doing that with all the areas that are rusty. I don't care if it bleeds out a little bit beyond the area where it's actually bumpy. I think that's fine. Give it a little bit more, like there's the weather or the rain or whatever is kind of to blend it out. Also too, over here is kind of how sometimes your rust can just be moved by liquid. Just do that as well. And then I'm going to do that over the entire thing. This is Terra Cotta. I'm just going to kind of dabble it on some of the rust just to bring it up a little bit, just to have a little bit of different color. And rust tends not to, yeah, you get the idea. Just going to kind of dabble it to have high points. And as the paint bleeds off my brush, I'm just going to move it around a little bit. I don't want a lot on at the first dabble, but just kind of move it around. Just give it some variation. Not all in one spot. This is Seraphim Sepia again, and what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go through and just hit the areas that I've already hit with rust. And what this will do is it'll sink into the recesses of the areas I've already hit and just discolor some of the areas and give it more texture and make it so it's just not like basically dabbled on like I've already done, and give it some more realism. Well, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but anyway, it makes it look better, in my personal 2 cents. And that's what I'm just going to do over the whole entire piece, is just do this. Especially in areas like that right there where I accidentally did too much. I want to hit and make sure it recesses in and just takes the color off. This is Terra Cotta and obviously black, but I'm going to mix some black into the Terra Cotta, darken it up. And this is going to be the base color for the terrain, and kind of just work with it as I go. I'll mix a little bit of water with it, just to make it so it spreads over the gravel easier. You notice on the terrain piece there's also gravel on there, or I should say playground sand, that's been sifted through a strainer. Just to, and I glued it down with Elmer's glue, and I've done it so many times in other videos that I just didn't show it in this one. But that's essentially what I did. Want it a little darker than that, get a little bit more black on there. I don't care if the playground sand shows through a little bit either. Just with being diluted, it just spreads over it a little bit more. I'm going to try and keep my apocalyptic terrain a little bit similar in nature. This one is kind of the same as I did on the, I think it was the Outpost. I'm not positive, I can't remember the name of the video, but I'm just going to spread this over and paint it all down, and hopefully I mixed enough. Trying not to be sloppy like I just was and got it up on that, but that's okay. Wipe it off my finger a little bit and see if that's fine. This is dark goldenrod. It's a little bit lighter than what I've already done. I just want to dry brush this on here and then just lightly going across the top of it just to hit the top light, the most protruding parts of the object you happen to be dry brushing. Therefore, it helps to add depth. I usually like to do 2 or 3 colors when I'm dry brushing, just to have that richness of different textures and colors. This one I'll probably do a little bit heavier than the other ones just to have more of this color applied to this terrain piece. And then I'll come through and I'll do the other ones lighter after this. This is maple sugar tan. It's just a color one up from this, kind of just a lighter tan or a lighter color. And you can just kind of find the different colors that you experiment with and work with and get that done. I'm going to try to remove most of the paint on this and not do very much pressure just because this is more of a highlight. I don't want to cover or drown the other color that I've already done. So this is just going to kind of bring it up a little bit more, give a little bit more texture, give a little bit more color, but not overpower the colors I've already applied. The final color I'm dry brushing is Sandstone. It's the lightest one I'm going to do, and I'm just going to do it very lightly just to kind of bring it up one more step. Try not to have too much on my brush, but if I do, that's okay. I just won't overly saturate it in one area. This is just some Elmer's glue I'm just going to put here so I can apply it where I want. And then I'm going to use this static grass and apply the static grass. I'll let it sit there for a minute, then I'll tap it off and just tap it into this box. And I'm going to do that over all the entire thing and just put this static grass. It's not a really dark green static grass. I've just mixed some different colors to have it kind of a muted color so it doesn't really stand out and not like it's really summery or like it's really dead either. I don't want either one. I want some life to it. These are Army Painter Wasteland tufts, and I'm just going to put them on randomly. No particular pattern. Just put them where I think they would look good. And this is just Elmer's glue. We'll go around and do that and just put these on. This is probably the final thing that I'll do. Hello and welcome to Platypus Scotsman. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope there's something in the video that you can apply to your hobby and that it was worthwhile as far as that's concerned. I've done other videos that have covered rust and various things, so I guess if you compile them all together, there's some information in there, hopefully that you can use. Anyway, if you have any questions, comments, leave them below. I'd like to thank those who support the channel, those who subscribe and who interact with the channel, leave messages, comments, or whatever the case is. But I especially like to thank the patrons who support the channel as well. And there's a lot of detail in this piece that I did not cover, such as like the fire extinguisher, little things, jewels, emblems. There was just so much that if I just covered every little item, that it would be a humongous video and not really that worthwhile. So I just kind of cover the overall thing. Plus, not everybody's going to have a fire extinguisher. Plus, not everybody's going to have pieces to stormcast. So there are other painters that do smaller items like Miniac and people like that who do miniatures, who you can use those techniques and apply them on a smaller scale and things like that. And just like Angel, who does like, he's done like the drums and different things like that. So I just want to cover the overall piece and the terrain that goes underneath it in this video. But anyway, you have a good night and hope everything's treating you well in your hobbies. If you want to check out pictures of the terrain that we do, you can hop over on Instagram under the same name, Platypus Scotsman. And you have a good night, and remember what my mother used to always say, that everybody can do art. Later. Jazz hands.